2 months before Lightfall's release, Season of the Seraph began to wind down. I was very excited for the impending release of Lightfall, and especially for the release of the new raid. At that point, I had never attempted, let alone completed, a day 1 raid. Wanting to be as prepared as possible, I began bounty prepping and started talking to my friends about forming a day 1 raid team. One of my close friends and I both wanted to finish the raid on contest mode, but weren't sure who we should make a team with. Eventually, we ended up joining a team with some acquaintances we'd recently met through Discord and started playing Destiny with. With our fire team created, we began practicing by completing Grandmaster Nightfalls, raids, and other endgame activities, some with the team and some not. By the time Lightfall released, we grinded out the legendary campaign, post-campaign content, and pinnacle activities to get our characters leveled past the raid's power cap. If you're unfamiliar with raid releases, each time Bungie releases a new raid in Destiny 2, for the first day or two, a modifier called Contest Mode is active. Players not only need to work out the mechanics for the first time, but also deal with extra difficulty as power is capped 20 levels below the enemies. This makes sure that for the race for a world's first completion, everyone is on a level playing field and also ensures the raid is a challenging experience for endgame PvE veterans. Having run Grandmaster Nightfalls in Seasons 18 and 19, I had some familiarity with the combat difficulty of being significantly underleveled. For context, GMs cap power at 25 levels under. However, I wasn't quite used to being that underleveled in a raid setting, so I wasn't quite sure what to expect. Finally, on March 10th at 11 AM, Lightfall's new raid, Root of Nightmares, was released. In order to encourage players to maintain healthy sleeping and eating habits, Bungie made contest mode last for 48 hours. I appreciated this move because it meant we didn't need to stay up all night trying to finish the raid and could take long breaks to eat and sleep. Shortly before release, my fire team hopped into the helm to prepare loadouts and launched the raid right at 11.
Yep, found it. Launching.
Where's the launch from?
Ooh, I like that. I like that map node.
Because a lot of people were starting the raid at the same time, it took the game 2.5 minutes to load us in.
Find Nezarec.
I immediately noticed that the raid looked visually stunning. I loved the contrast of the giant silver tree flowers growing over a pyramid ship and the traveler glowing in the sky above. The environment was consistently beautiful for the whole raid, up there with Garden of Salvation in terms of visuals. After traversing an opening section for about 3 minutes, we arrived at the first encounter, Cataclysm. After a few wipes, we were able to determine the way to extend our buff timer to avoid an immediate wipe. However, this wasn't enough to beat the encounter, so it took a few more attempts to get the remaining mechanics down. Once we had figured out the bulk of the mechanics, we split our fire team into 5 players who cleared adds, scions, tormentors, and barrier champions, and had a single player doing the light bubbles. It wasn't terribly difficult in contest mode, but because we didn't know exactly how the mechanics worked, it took us a bit to figure out how to optimize our strategies. After a few more tries, we were able to clear the encounter. We looted the first chest almost exactly an hour and 15 minutes into contest mode.
His hatred halts.
Burn this gamer.
We don't have a timer right now, so...
Still burn this gamer.
Yeah, we did. We did.
Let's go.
Yes!
Let's
Fuck
go.
yeah.
Let's go.
GG's.
Let's
Okay.
go.
Guys.
Alright,
Chest over here.
Enter the route. By that point, we had heard that another team had already reached the third of 4 encounters, so we knew we probably were not going to be contenders for an early ranking unless everyone else got stuck somewhere. After 6 minutes of traversing a jumping puzzle, I arrived at the second encounter, Scission. However, one of my teammates discovered the first secret chest between encounters, so we doubled back to open it and didn't start the second encounter until 4 minutes later. That brought the time to 12:25, an hour and 25 minutes into the raid. It took us a while to figure out the second encounter's mechanics, which were similar to the previous encounter but with a few things added on. Instead of 1 runner, we immediately realized Scission would require 2. One of the coolest things about Scission is that there's a giant pit pit in the middle of the arena that splits the encounter into a light and dark side. To traverse the gap, you use launchers that catapult players across. We found this mechanic a bit buggy, as sometimes we wouldn't get launched far enough to survive, and other times we would get sent so far that we reached the floor above. Pretty much immediately upon seeing the two sides separated by the gap, we realized it would probably be optimal to have 2 teams of 3 split along each side. In the 3-player teams, 2 players cleared ads and the 2 runners jumped back and forth across each side to complete the bubble mechanics. We also discovered that each side had enemies spawn that were immune to damage unless the player had the corresponding side's buff, so we started having the ad clear players group up on the plates to be ready to receive the buff when the runner arrived. Based on the arena, it was pretty easy to see that this encounter, like Caretaker in VOW, takes place over 3 different floors where you repeat the mechanic each time to proceed up to the next one. It took us a while to optimize this encounter enough to get past the first floor, because the timing is pretty tight, but we almost had it down when disaster struck. 3 hours into the raid, a thunderstorm hit the area one of my teammates lives in and knocked out his power. This meant we needed to find another player to fill our 6th spot temporarily. We eventually were able to find someone and resumed our attempts at 2:40 p.m., 3 hours and 40 minutes into contest mode. By this point, there were rumors that someone had already cleared the raid, but Bungie had yet to confirm the winners of contest mode. By this point, we knew that needing to wait so long to find a replacement player for our 6th meant that we probably wouldn't get a good placement in the race, so at this point, we were just trying to finish the raid before contest mode ended to unlock the exclusive emblem. Our new 6th synergized with the team nicely, and just 15 minutes later, we had cleared Scission.
Oh, thank God.
Let's go!
Oh
my
fucking
Second encounter done.
Chest is over here.
The chest's on the other side.
I got
Of course
another
it is.
shotgun.
This brought us to the second jumping puzzle. Most Destiny jumping puzzles are fairly light on mechanics, but this one proved to be an exception, similar to the jumping puzzle between Caretaker and Exhibition in VOW. While most jumping puzzles kill players who fail by having a death plane beneath the arena, Root additionally introduces a mechanic where players die if they don't perform mechanics correctly. A buff can be acquired from the light and darkness bubbles that shields the player from death by the energy pulses. I like this idea because it does a good job of introducing players to a mechanic that doesn't become relevant again until the final boss. Thankfully, the revive timer is very short and everyone dying doesn't make you restart, which is how all jump puzzles should be in my opinion. That way you don't have to wait a super long time if someone is continuously failing. We figured out how to survive after a single set of deaths to the pulse mechanic because you acquire the buff from the bubbles in a very similar manner to the way the second encounter works.
Oh.
I think we have to. When there's a dark
Refuge,
pulse like
refuge,
this, you need dark.
refuge.
You need dark with refuge.
Refuge.
How did y'all die?
If you don't have dark refuge, you die to the dark bubbles, I think, and if you don't need light's refuge to get the light bubbles.
Thanks to many teams already being on the third encounter, we already knew where the second and final secret chest was located, so we were able to find it fairly easily during this puzzle. We needed to wait for one of my teammates who had something come up during the jumping puzzle, so we weren't able to start the third encounter, Macrocosm, until 3:23, 4 hours and 23 minutes into contest mode. Macrocosm was the first boss encounter, which meant it was the first encounter where we ran into a major roadblock. The difficulty settings of contest mode mean that all enemies, but especially bosses, have a lot more health and do a lot more damage to players than normal. This meant that figuring out a balance of sustained damage and survivability to make it through all phases of the fight was key. This proved to be one of the biggest challenges of contest mode for my team. The third encounter of Root of Nightmares is the raid's most mechanic-heavy encounter. While not being as complicated as something like Acquisition, Macrocosm is still one of the more mechanically difficult encounters in Destiny. Floating in the air above the arena is an orrery of sorts that displays 15 planets and moons, some from Earth's solar system and others from different star systems. Notably, it includes Io and Titan. The main mechanic of the encounter is swapping planets to align them against the boss, making them vulnerable to damage. Like Scission, there are two sides to the arena, light and dark. This is shown to the player by having 2 of the 3 centermost planets each glowing with light and dark energy respectively. The environmental clues made this encounters extremely easy to solve, and we figured it out pretty much immediately, but executing them consistently proved to be difficult in contest mode. This isn't a raid tutorial, so I'm not going to explain them in detail, but essentially it involves swapping planets between the light and dark sides, which means there's a lot of crosstalk and different callouts happening at the same time. The boss is immune to damage until you successfully complete a phase of swapping planets. The boss gives you 3 phases before enraging and wiping the team. This means you need to execute the entire cycle 3 times while doing enough damage to defeat the boss before you run out of phases. This proved to be very difficult for my team, as the large number of callouts was sometimes confusing when swapping planets. We eventually devised a callout system that I literally wrote on the back of an envelope on my desk so that I could refer to it during the encounter. Once we had standardized our callouts, we started typing them out in chat each phase to compensate for the crosstalk occurring while swapping. However, we still had difficulty with players surviving the trek across the middle of the arena, so we had to work on improving our ad clear to consistently succeed enough to beat the encounter. Even though we were stuck on Macrocosm for a long time, I really enjoyed the time we spent there because I thought the orrery and planet swapping mechanics were very cool and really fun to execute. It probably shows my bias as an astronomy nerd though.
Yeah.
Yes, it's Neptune. It's Mars, it's Jupiter, it's Venus, I think that's Europa. The way to my heart is astronomy. After a total of nearly 6 hours of gameplay and 40 minutes of downtime, we still had not cleared the 3rd encounter. At this point, a couple members of my fire team disclosed that they hadn't slept the night before, and another was in Europe, so it was getting to be pretty late for them. We decided to take a break for 4 hours so that they could take naps. Meanwhile, I ate dinner, took a shower, and watched the new raid outro cutscene that was unlocked for all players upon completion of Worlds First. Thankfully, by 9:30 p.m. when we had agreed to reconvene, the person who had lost power had regained it and was able to join us again. However, one of the people that took a nap overslept her alarm and did not show up to our next set of attempts. Thus, we had to LFG for another 6 to the raid. Thankfully, I found someone from my clan who was looking for a team to do the 3rd encounter, who I had played with a few times before and knew was super nice. It extended the wait to restart attempts by another half hour, but we were able to restart at 10 p.m. By the time we restarted, we had the encounter's mechanics down. It was just damage and survivability that were proving to be an issue. Eventually, we found that a surprising damage strategy proved to be most effective for us. Thanks to a recent machine gun balancing pass, Thunderlord plus the Catalyst was competitive for total damage output, so we ran 5 Thunderlords and a Divinity. This was able to put out enough damage to clear the 3-phase requirement. At 1:30 a.m., after being stuck for a total of 5 hours of attempts and 9.5 hours of total gameplay, we finally cleared Macrocosm.
Damage now.
Burn. Anyone got well?
No. Come on, go.
We did it!
Yes!
There it is.
Oh,
After
my
hours!
Big fuck.
Hold on.
Fuck you.
We've been here for 4 hours.
That's not even including the hours we spent before this encounter.
Yeah.
The team was ecstatic as I was becoming delirious from a lack of sleep and worried I would need to go to bed before we finished the encounter. I love mechanics-heavy raid encounters because most of the team is involved, meaning the whole team needs to know how they function. I also like them because it always feels incredible when you execute them properly and clear the encounter. After clearing Macrocosm, I gained a new energy boost from the excitement of clearing the encounter and was able to continue attempts for a while longer. At this point, the only thing standing between us and a contest clear was the final boss, Nezarec, Final God of Pain. What an absolute edgelord of a name.
Oh, I was mid-jump.
All good.
Is it the same? It's... Oh, crack.
Nazi poo.
Look at that. The fucking mall.
Oh my god.
Alright, Seth, let's go to...
Holy shit.
This encounter is a combination of the second encounter's path mechanics and the jumping puzzle's wipe mechanics. Eventually, we decided to split our team into 2 runners, 1 person to destroy crit spots and watch for the telegraphed wipe mechanic type, and 3 people on ad clear, 1 per lane. Ads, especially the Colossuses, were no joke on contest mode. Like the third encounter, you only have a total of 3 damage phases to defeat Nezarec, otherwise you wipe and need to start the encounter over. Nezarec proved to be the most challenging encounter for my team to clear on contest mode. After 2.5 hours of attempts, it was 4 in the morning. We had spent about 12 hours of attempts to beat the raid, and I was starting to fall asleep in my chair, so we decided to take a 9-hour sleep break and return at 1 PM to make a final push to clear the raid. The next morning, we discovered that one of my teammates had stayed up all night and beaten the raid with an LFG team, and no longer wanted to help us try to beat the raid. This was pretty frustrating, but we at least were able to get the person who overslept our late night attempts back on the team, so we pulled another person in from LFG, which delayed us from starting by another 25 minutes. After an hour and a half, that person needed to leave, so we pulled in someone else from LFG. Unfortunately, 30 minutes later, one of my teammates' computers crashed, making them unable to rejoin our attempts, so we unfortunately had to pull in a third completely random person from LFG. An hour and 15 minutes later, another one of my original teammates needed to leave, leading us to pull yet a 4th person in from LFG. My friend, our remaining original teammate, and I started joking that we were becoming the raid team of Theseus at this point. We eventually realized that the middle plate we were doing damage from was suboptimal for the encounter because the boss kept hiding behind a pillar, costing us damage. We tried a few different locations and ended up landing on a flower in the back left of the arena that keeps the boss relatively close and visible for most of the phase. There was a slight risk of being booped off the edge by the boss, but our damage was more consistent in that spot. Our damage strategies of using rocket launchers with Gallarhorn and Starfire Protocol Fusion Nade Spam Warlocks started paying off, and we started getting closer and closer to clearing the encounter. We kept getting runs where we would survive until Nezarec enraged, but people would go down and we wouldn't have any revive tokens, which cost us the damage we needed to finish the fight. After an hour of attempts with our 4th, 5th, and 6th LFG teammates, we finally beat Nezarec and the raid.
Give it to us.
Wait, sir. Teleporting to the left. Alright, final stand.
Swapping outbreak.
Swapping.
Go, go, go.
Dump his ass.
We're so sinking close.
Keep shooting, keep shooting.
Let's fucking
We
go.
did it! Fuck yeah!
Oh yeah.
Fuck. Teabag his ass. Teabag his ass.
I hate
We
this guy.
killed the god of pain.
Let's go. Can't handle my
I got the
pain.
shotty. I got the shotty. Oh, I got the shotty. I got the
Oh
shotty.
wow, nice.
The hammer's up here. I got a
Horticulturalist.
helmet.
Clearing Root of Nightmares on contest mode took us a grand total of 17 hours and 20 minutes, only roughly 16 hours of which were actual attempts. I ultimately thoroughly enjoyed the contest mode experience. Even though it was frustrating to try for hours and keep failing, I was very happy that we were ultimately able to succeed. I'm very thankful to the 11 total teammates I had during contest mode for making the experience enjoyable for the most part. We got very lucky with the randoms we pulled in, as they all were very nice, considerate, and good teammates. I would absolutely recommend trying a contest mode raid if you can find find a team to join. It's definitely worth it and a unique experience. I'm excited to try contest mode for the next returning remastered raid in the fall. Hopefully the experience will be even better than Root of Nightmares. I'm interested to hear what other people's experiences are with contest mode. Have you finished a contest mode raid before? If so, what did you think of it? Specifically, I'm also interested to hear what people think of Root of Nightmares' contest mode experience. Let me know in the comments. My name is E4Me. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.